well. And today we're going to talk about some racing stories that has happened, and they're pretty exciting. And it was a while ago, and there was a track in San Diego, California. Do you know San Diego, California? There's a crash over there. There's a crash. There's a crash over there. And this track was a speedway track. And hopefully you guys like speedway. And I was only like 17 years old at the time. I had just taken lessons from the number two speedway rider in the United States named Dub Farrell. Number 121, dangerous Dub Farrell. He was a good rider. And he taught me how to ride. I had to pay for it, but it was a great experience. I went over to Maley's practice track in Corona, and I learned how to ride. And every Saturday and Sunday, I would go to Lake Elsinore and I would practice speedway. And I was getting a little better and better. And by the time I was like 17 years old, I was feeling pretty good. And I heard there was a track that started. It was like a low level D1, up and coming D2 riders, some D3 too. There's a track called Otay Mesa, Chula Vista, California, in San Diego. And my friend said, just come down there and try out and see if you can make the program. So I had practiced a lot, and I went ahead and went down there, and it was on like afternoon before the season started. And I don't know, the riders maybe weren't that good, but I was one of the top riders at the track. So it was a practice session. So they said, sign up here for next Saturday night for the program. So I said, yeah, I can beat all these guys. Of course I want to race. Oh, you always want to win, right? And if you know you can beat these guys, you want to be on that program. So I signed my name, and the promoter watched me beat pretty much mostly everybody in like practice racing and stuff, scratch racing, handicap racing. And I felt really good about it. And so the next Saturday came, and I was very excited. You know, that track was like 2 hours from my house. It's very far. And I got there, and I was really excited about racing, seeing where I was on the program. And I opened the program, and I was flipping through it, and my name wasn't on the program. And I'm like, what's happening here? Why isn't my name on the program? And I went to the promoter and I said, you know, I was here like last Saturday afternoon practicing, and I was one of the better riders out here for that afternoon race. And like, why aren't I on the program? And he said, I don't know. One of the riders' dads, I think he printed the program. Maybe he saw me. Maybe he didn't want me on the program because he had a son that was on the program, who's one of my good friends today. So anyways, I was on the program, and I said, well, I want to be a reserve. And he goes, I'm sorry, but it's going to be very difficult for you to be a reserve. And I said, why is that? And he said, well, there's like 4 or 5 guys in reserve before you because it was opening night and lots of people wanted to race this track. And I'm like, I don't care. Put me on the reserve list, number 4 or 5. I don't care. I want to ride. And I was very angry because like they didn't even notice me. And I was definitely maybe one of the top riders, if not the top rider at the track during the practice. And they didn't even put me on the program. It was very disrespectful. And so I drove far. You know, I drove like 2 hours. This was on the border of Mexico. On the border of Mexico. And it was far from my house in Orange County. So I waited, and then the promoter came up to me and said, guess what, Bryan? It's your lucky day. We have some people not showing up to the races. And Denny Scopoletti, he's riding for the San Bernardino Sizzlers. and he didn't want to come because he's focusing on racing on one of the teams. So I said, okay, that's great. So I was kind of mad though, like they didn't even know who I was and they didn't put me on the program. And I just felt a little bit slanted and I was kind of angry. Usually, if I get mad, I don't like say too much, but I usually take it out on the track. I don't go around yelling and making a scene, but I'm very mad on the inside. So they put me in a first division race, and I went ahead and did really well. I think I did really well in the handicap program, and in the scratch program, I think I won the scratch uh, main event that night. So people are like, "You weren't even on the program, and now you've won the scratch main event, the opening night." And I turned to the promoter and I said, "Don't you ever forget me on the program from now on," because I felt kind of insulted that you didn't put me on the program. And I went ahead and proved to you tonight that I was the best scratch rider out of all these guys, up and coming speedway riders. So he's like, "Oh, don't worry, you're on the program next week." In fact, they had a competition. It's called King of the Hill Match Race Champion. And during the opening night signups, they had this beautiful silver cup, like a trophy. And that was for the end of the year. They had the best 3 riders in match race competed for that cup. It was a one-night event at the very last night of the season. So it was beautiful silver cup, and it was beautiful. And I said, I want that cup, and I like it. And they said, well, you're racing next week. This racer from New Zealand named Kevin McDonald, and he's the current king of the match race champion. And you're going to race Kevin McDonald. You're probably not going to beat him, but you're going to race this hot shoe from New Zealand. He's an import. And so I said, no problem. I'll race anybody. So the next week came along, and I had a successful night at the program. And most every night there, I did pretty well. And then I raced Kevin McDonald on the King of the Hill match race. And I went ahead and I just blew that guy away. I just smoked his butt. And I'm like, I am the new king here. And I held that king. Every week they'd have a new king, and they'd have a challenger. So the winner of the scratch main event would be the new challenger for the next week. And so I was the current king, and I started racing guys like Larry Costa, who was eventually went to be a third place in the United States Speedway Nationals one year. And I raced him a bunch of times and had a lot of success before he got older. And then I raced a young Brad Oxley. And Brad was just a young rider. We were kind of like the same age, but he was kind of a small guy. He hadn't grown. And Brad and I didn't know each other that much. I just knew that Brad was like the son of Harry Oxley, who was the promoter of Costa Mesa Speedway. And every week he would bring his papa, Harry, and George Wynn, the old Englishman. Hey, George Wynn, he's the one who gold plated Ivan Major's third world championship Jawa, and it sits in a museum. I believe it's in New Zealand to this day. And George Wynn and another guy, they told Ivan Major that if you win your third world championship, we're going to ship that bike from Europe, and we're going to gold plate it and give it back to you. You're going to have a golden bike. So he did. He went ahead and won it, and they sent the bike. Ivan did, and then George Wynn and this other guy, they gold plated it and sent it back to Ivan Major in New Zealand. But anyways, he was a good engine builder, and he was with Brad Oxley's team. That was Brad Oxley's engine builder. He was good though, and he knew a lot about speedway. He had been around like in the 1930s, 1940s. He knew all the rules and regulations of speedway. He could build speedway tracks. The guy was kind of an expert genius about speedway. and he was pretty good with engines. He had an engine, a Jawa. He put an engine case. It was a Win Jawa speedway bike, and although he wasn't my mechanic personally, he seemed to do a pretty good job. My mechanic was maybe more famous than George Wynn, and that was Jerry Fairchild, who was the president of the SRA, and he was a tuner of all the early day great American speedway riders like Jack Milne, Cordy Milne, Lammy Lameraw, Ernie Rocio. He had tuned all these top riders, and he was old guy at the time, and I was just a young 16-year-old. I was a young lion. He'd call me, he said, "Bryan, you're my young lion." And I'm like, "Argh! I'm a young lion." I was a young lion. I'm not a young lion anymore, but I was a young lion once upon a time. And so Jerry Fairchild was probably one of the best engine builders on earth at the time. He used to do like fuel injection for Mercedes, and Mercedes would contact him and have him fly to Germany and teach the Mercedes-Benz mechanics how to make fuel injection car engines in the early days. Jerry Fairchild was a genius, and he liked me because I rode the JAP, and Jerry Fairchild was an expert JAP engine builder. So he built my JAP, and it just was fast as a rocket. I mean, it would beat all these Jawas pretty much handily. You know, the JAP has a very big power band, and it's kind of a radical bike. And I was only like 165 pounds, and I was about 6'1", 165 pounds, and I was fast because of the motorcycle, not because of me probably. But I rode Jerry Fairchild's engine, and it was my bike, and he did the tuning for my bike, and it was fast. And the JP was an amazing motorcycle at the time. And Jerry, reason why he also tuned for me is he said, "I want you to beat those Jawas." You know, he was an old JP guy, so he wanted to see the last of the JPs beating the Jawas. And eventually, not at that time, but eventually, I became the last JAP rider to win Division I scratch and handicap main events in the United States, and there was no more D1 JAP riders. So maybe one of my claim to fame was I was the last JAP Division I rider to do well on a JAP, and after that, there was no more JAPs having success in American Speedway ever. And so that was kind of cool. It's because of Jerry, really. But anyways, getting back to the story, George was the tuner for Brad Oxley, and I would see him all the time. And, you know, I had some success riding the match race. I'd win like 2 King of the Hill match race, 2 lap, and during the intermission, I'd win like 2 of them. And then I would like lose one event, and then I would have to come back and win. I was on top of the points for a while. And then one day, Jerry Fairchild, this was during the time when they had the Bakersfield Bandits of the National Speedway League. And Dub Farrow, which was Jerry Fairchild's rider, he was the number 2 rider at the time in the United States. He said, "Bryan, you're doing pretty well, and I want you to come to Bakersfield and race Division I." It was the last year that they had the speedway at the Bakersfield Fairgrounds. And he said, I want to see if you can compete with the Division I guys at Bakersfield. I know you're cleaning out, you know, with these Division I, II riders, mostly Division II riders at the Chula Vista track. But I want to see you if you can race and compete at the high level with these good guys in Bakersfield. It was the last year they raced there. So I said, sure. I said, but you got to take me in your truck because Bakersfield's a long ways. I was only like 16 or 17. I was like a young kid. And Jerry had this big purple maroon truck with like a camper shell. And he would load a whole stack full of Dub Farrow Speedway bikes in there. So I told Jerry, just throw my bike in the back. And he had a bed on top. It was an enclosed trailer. And I drove I slept on the bed all the way to Bakersfield, and I just chilled while Jerry and Ida, his wife, they drove, but Jerry was the driver. And the first night I raced at the Bakersfield, it was during one of the team racing matches, and I got lucky, I guess, and I won the handicap main. They didn't put me in scratch because they're doing, I think, the team racing, and I'm not sure if they had scratch racing at the time because it was team racing, but they had a handicap program, and I got on it, and I won the main. And I just remember a couple things from that night. I remember Jim Gresham. He had passed away. I guess he had an accident changing a tire. The car fell on him and he died. Rest in peace, Jim Gresham. And his brother is good friends with Scott Autry, and we're all kind of good friends now. Scott Autry and Gresham's brother. And but so I remember Jim Gresham, when he was racing on Bakersfield, he was laughing the whole time. And I went up to Jim and I go like, "Why are you laughing at me?" And he goes, "I just think it's funny that I don't know who you are, and you came here to Bakersfield and you won the handicap main event." And he was laughing his ass off. But my bike was really hooking up good there, and I had a very nice evening. And so all I remember is kissing the trophy girl, and they're all like a bunch of farmer girls, and there's all these cowboy guys with hats. And I wasn't really a cowboy. I was more of a city dude. But they were kind of pretty girls, and I was a single guy and stuff. And I said to myself, I think I could like pick up on some of these chicks here, maybe one of them. But I was going home too. But I was just like seeing what my luck would be like, because there's all these pretty country girls, cowgirls. So I talked to the trophy girl. She didn't. I gave her a kiss when I won the main event. And then I was seeing a bunch of other girls like came up to me like for autograph, and I was trying to pick up on a couple of them, but they didn't like me. I think they liked the country boys, they liked the cowboys, and I was like, they could tell I wasn't a cowboy. Anyways, we went back to South Bay Speedway, the Chula Vista, and I think I spent a few weeks at Bakersfield. I can't remember, but when I went back, Brad Oxley had taken over. Brad Oxley had won 2 United States championships back in the 80s. So he was a future U.S. champion, and he raced Speedway in Europe for a couple years. But Brad was the top point getter for the King of the Hill thing. And I couldn't catch him for some reason. And the season had come to an end. And I had a really successful year. I can't remember all the details, but I knew I had lots of wins. And they started me, I think it was at the 30-yard line, and then 40, 50. And I think I raced at the 50 or 60-yard line. So got an airplane coming. And so it was pretty fun. And they had the last night of the season. And like I mentioned, they had that King of the Hill Cup. It was a big, beautiful silver cup. And that was something that I always wanted. And the race before that, I think I swept the program. And there was this one guy, I shouldn't even mention his name. I played football, American football with him. Many years before that, when I was only like 12 years old, and I was like 17 at this time. And he was like a crappy rider, like a Division III rider, and he just was never any good, really. And he come from a rich family, and I saw him before I bought my bike, and I was like saying hi to him. So he was acting like, "Hey, I'm very hot," and then I became kind of good. And he got jealous of me, and I didn't really pay attention to him because I'm so busy racing and taking care of my bike and trying to win races that I kind of ignored this guy or just kind of didn't pay attention to him. And so I guess the guy started getting mad at me, because I kind of became a track favorite. And Lots of people liked me, and I had big lines for autographs, and I was kind of like one of the most popular riders there. And this guy was not the popular rider there. Nobody even like knew this guy was alive. But I didn't say nothing to him because I didn't really pay attention to him because I was so busy with all my glory and fame. I didn't have time to like look at this guy. But I knew he was around, but I just, was busy. So anyways, one day just before the final night, I had drove my white van there, and I was leaving the races. I had a good night of racing, and I'm leaving, and this guy had this like van also with his name on it, I think. And he was parked at the exit gate by the pits, just waiting. And so when I left, because I was one of the last people to leave because of signing autographs and stuff, this guy, he got mad, and I guess I don't know if the guy was taking drugs or something, but the guy he had this knife out the window, and he said like, "Get over here, I want to cut you up." And I'm like, "What?" Because I never talked to the guy, and I never said any bad words, or I never teased him, for being so crappy or nothing. I was so busy with my own life, and I don't bother people, I mind my own business. And so the guy, he stuck his head out the window, and I think he was on drugs or something. After the races, we were driving home, and he says, "I want to like kill you or something." And I was scared because it was dark. I was like alone, I think, at the time. And I didn't really like know what to do. So I sped up my van and got away from this crazy guy. And I went home, and I told all my friends about this guy. I said, "This guy is like crazy." And he pulled a knife on me. He wanted to like cut me up, I didn't even do nothing to this guy. I told my friends, at the time, it was the Rocio brothers, Ernie and Johnny Rocio. Johnny has since passed away. And, and Johnny is a black belt in karate. And I said, "This guy is like bothering me, and I don't know what's wrong with this guy." And so he said, we'll stay with you. And then if there's any problems, we'll go ahead and protect you. I go, "I really don't want to fight. I just want to race motorcycles." So anyways, the next Friday night, they used to have Friday nights at Costa Mesa. And I went to Costa Mesa the following Friday night, and I was racing. And after the races, this guy, he came up to me and said like, "I'm going to beat the shit out of you." And I asked the guy like, "What's your problem, dude? Like, why do you want to do that?" And then he said, "Because I don't like you." And then my friend, Ernie Rocio, he had an injury, and he hurt himself. He broke his collarbone practicing. We were practicing the week before at Lake Elsinore. And he had a sling over his shoulder with a broken collarbone. And Ernie's kind of like a strong kind of person. And Ernie told the guy, he said like, "Why don't you like fuck off and leave Bryan alone?" And then this rider, this D3 rider, left me and came over to Ernie. and he told Ernie, "I'm going to beat you up." And his brother, Johnny, who's a black belt in karate, he told him to screw off and stuff. And so this rider went to Johnny, who's a small Italian guy, and he told Johnny he was going to beat him up. He's going from me to Ernie to Johnny. And when he told Johnny he was going to beat him up, Johnny just started punching him. And Johnny was a black belt in karate. He threw like 35 punches in 5 seconds and totally knocked the guy out. And got some workers around here, I'm sorry. But anyways, he knocked this guy out. He knocked him out. He fell down and hit his head on the concrete. Thought the guy died. And this was in the pits after the races. at Costa Mesa on the concrete. I still have my little cold, my cough, if I talk too much. Anyways, I didn't know what to do because I was in shock when Johnny knocked the shit out of this guy. So I just left, and Ernie and I walked away, and Johnny, we just left. And the next week, this guy, he went ahead and I saw him at Costa Mesa the next week, and he saw me, and he was scared to death. He goes, "Peace, peace." And I thought the guy was going to want to fight me. I'm like, dude, I don't want to hurt you, you know. I was probably could fight the guy too, but I didn't really want to. I'm not really into fighting racers. So anyways, the guy never bothered me again. He's still around. He's on Facebook, and he's kind of I don't know. I guess he's a nice guy. I don't talk to him. He don't talk to me. We kind of don't have any communication. I'm not real happy with the way he treated me, so I'm kind of over it. So getting back to the racetrack, the next week we got an airplane over here. Hi, airplane. And we had the King of the Hill match race championship, and it was a final. And it was Brad Oxley, number 1, me, number 2, and Larry Costa, number 3. And the number 2 and 3 riders had to race each other to see who was going to race Oxley for the championship. So I raced Larry Costa and did pretty good. And I had pretty good success against Larry pretty much mostly all the year. He had got me a few times, but I got him, I think, the majority of the time. So I wasn't too worried about him, really. And then it was Oxley who kind of came in when I had gone to Bakersfield, and he had scored a bunch of points and stuff. And, you know, Brad was a good rider. He's a future United States Speedway champion. He's a good guy. And Brad Oxley is just, you know, he could ride a Speedway bike for sure. A future 2-time U.S. Speedway champion probably is not a bad Speedway rider. So we had the final, and the announcer, he came up to me and he said, "Hey, Bryan, I want you to come up in the stands right before the final race, before the big championship. And I want you to tell the crowd, talk to the crowd, you know." I never really did that before. So I went ahead and went up to the stands, and Brad was there in the pits with Harry Oxley, his dad, and George Wynn, his mechanic. And I was up there, and the announcer, he said, like, "Hey, Bryan, you know, like, what's your chances of beating Oxley tonight? You think you're gonna beat that guy? He's ranked number 1, and you're ranked number 2. Yeah, you think you can pull it off?" And then I had the microphone, and I told the whole crowd, and Oxley heard it, everybody heard it. And I said, "Well, to be honest with you, I don't really see it a big problem. I think I can like handle myself out there, and I think I can take Oxley out, and I could win that championship. So I'm not really overly worried about it. I know it's going to be a hard race. I know I have to give it my all, but I'm not really worried, and I know I'm going to win that race. Like, I feel it in my heart." And I could just see Harry Oxley's eyes getting big through his Coke bottle glasses, and George Wynn like going to Brad like, "You got to beat this guy. He's an arrogant son of a bitch." And I'm like, "No, I'm not arrogant. I just knew I was going to beat these guys up because I really wanted this cup. I don't care who it was. It wasn't just like I wanted to beat Brad. I don't care if it was the man on the moon. I wanted that freaking cup, because every week at signups, I would see that beautiful cup, and it would say match race champion, and it was a beautiful big silver cup, and I wanted it. I could see it at my house. It's at my house now. And so anyways, I went ahead and I can't remember exactly. It was the best out of 3, but I had beat Oxley for that cup, and I was very happy. And I was happy because I told everyone I was going to win, and I won that race. So that was pretty cool. And I had my pitman with me, and we were just celebrating all the way home. screaming and yelling. And we were so happy. We were in my van, and we were hungry because, you know, it was a very emotional night. So we were coming back from San Diego. And when you come back from San Diego, there was this Denny's restaurant open 24 hours a day over in like San Clemente, California. And so I said, let's just go to Denny's. I want a whole bunch of money for winning that championship. And I got that beautiful cup. And that was like one of the best days of my life. I was so happy. That was my first championship I won. And it was a difficult one, you know. Brad Oxley and Larry Costa are no slouches. These guys were hot riders, and they were hard to beat. So I gave it everything I had, and, you know, I just had a little bit more will to win, I think. And I had a fast bike from Fairchild. That helped me too. So we pulled over at Denny's restaurant in San Clemente, and we pulled in the parking stall, and lo and behold, there was Brad Oxley's truck right next to me with Brad's Speedway bike and stuff. So I'm like to the guys, oh my God, Brad Oxley's here. You know, he just finished beating Brad about an hour earlier. And I didn't talk to Brad at all. So I said, you know, Brad's eating dinner at this at this Denny's. And it was like, you know, 12 o'clock at night or 1 o'clock in the morning by the time we got to San Clemente from San Diego. So I told my pit guys, I said, if you see Oxley's and George Wynn, don't say nothing to them. Don't look at them. Don't talk to them. Don't laugh. Don't make a joke. Just mind your own business, eat your food, and we go home. And if you make like a trouble or you make any like drama, I'm going to be very mad at you. So I kind of gave them like a bunch of crap. I told them, don't mess around, because, you know, I respect other speedway riders and I don't want to insult anybody. So the waitress sits us at the Denny's, and she sits us at this booth. We had like 4 of us. And then she sits us right next to Brad Oxley's group with George Wynn. And I'm like, oh my God, we're sitting right next to Brad and his dad and George Wynn and another couple pit guys and stuff. So I was kind of like freaking out, you know, I'm like, shit. And I'm like to the guys, like, don't you say nothing, you know. And so anyways, nobody said anything, and we all ate our food. Oxley's didn't talk to us, and we didn't talk to Oxley's, and we just like minded our own business, and we just kind of like ended the situation. So that's kind of how it turned out. Is you know, we left and went home, but nobody said a word to them, and we didn't say anything to each other. So that was kind of funny that situation happened. Got a guy walking around, checking him out. So that was kind of an exciting event in my life. And when I got my number 77, a lot of the riders were mad at me. They were like, you know, we're going to go to Oxley and we're going to complain about you getting your racing number 77, because that was my racing number when I was 17 years old. I had got that number. And so when I was racing again in the 2000s, I wanted my number back because it was my number and nobody else had that number. So Brad went ahead and gave me that number, and he issued it to me back again because it was my number. And then a lot of my competitors were mad. They didn't want me to have that number. And just checking this area. And so they went up to Brad in the office at the Costa Mesa, and they said, like, why does Bryan have number 77? Like, we don't like that. You know, Bryan has this number, and we don't want him to have number 77. And Brad looked at these riders, 2 or 3 of these riders, and said to them, look at, Bryan is the only guy to ever beat me for a championship. My first championship when I was 16 or 17, Bryan beat me. And if he was good, he said to the guys, have you ever beat me in a championship? Because Brad was just a hot D1 rider. I mean, this guy turned to be a sensational rider, and he was a star racing in Europe. He was a good rider, and he was a star in America. And the guy said, no, Brad, we could never beat you. So Oxley said, that's right, you can't beat me. And Bryan beat me, so he can have his number 77 back. And they're like, okay, Brad. And they left his office. So, you know, I was able to like have a really, you know, good experience in Speedway thanks to Brad Oxley. You know, he had this terrible accident a few years back in Mexico. He almost died. He hit a cow riding at 50 miles an hour on his 450 Honda CRF, and he nearly died. And I got to interview him on my show. I was the first person to interview him. Brad doesn't like social media that much as far as like going online. And he came on my show and we talked about the Chula Vista days. And you can see it on my channel. It's there. Brad Oxley interview. But it was fun. And Brad and I are like good buddies to this day. And he's just a good guy. He's still a promoter. He took over for his dad who retired, Harry. And he's one of the best track builders at Speedway in the United States. And he took over for his dad running Costa Mesa Speedway. It's like the 54th year of Speedway. And Brad is the next generation of running the track. And soon he'll be giving it to his sons, Colton. So he has sons that he's going to have to give it to so they can run the track, you know, one day, because we're all getting older, right? And so that was pretty cool. And like I say, Brad and I are friends to this day. And we reminisce those days and stuff. And Brad always is nice to me. And, you know, we don't have any hostilities. And we're kind of like best friends. And we remember the old days of racing and stuff like that. And it was cool. And he came up to me one day when I was racing back in like 2006. I was racing full time on the circuit in support class. And he said, you know, Bryan, he goes, you have the coolest name. And I said, what? And he says, you're the Bumblebee. And I go, yeah. He goes, that is the coolest name. Like Madonna, Bumblebee, Sting. You know, you have a name like that. And I go, oh, that's, yeah. I mean, I never thought about it. I go, yeah, that's cool. And I wasn't really thinking about it. And then Brad says, but me, my name is Rad Brad. And I don't like that, you know, Rad Brad. He goes, I like one name, like Bumblebee or, you know, that kind of thing. And so I thought that was kind of funny. So Brad didn't like his Rad Brad. I thought it was pretty cool because Rad Brad is kind of a radical guy. But that was kind of the days of the Chula Vista, the last night. Also, I have a photo with Louis Kossuth as a little boy. He was like 12 years old, and he won the main event in the junior speedway that night. And Louis, he passed away like 6 years ago in Northern California. He had a heart attack or something, and had a bad, you know, situation happen to him. So we no longer have Louis with us, and his father, who ran the Santa Ana Bowl, we'll talk about that sometime. He passed away too. So a lot of these guys have passed away. So it's really sad. That's why it's important for all of us to keep our health, you know, and not have a cold like I have, take medicine like I take, and just try to keep your body as healthy as possible. But we had some good times back at Chula Vista, San Diego. Sadly, the track closed after that last main event, that championship race, and it never opened again. So it was a one-year wonder, a one-hit wonder, the Chula Vista Speedway. And like Brad would say, it was kind of a quirky track. You know, it was kind of like a track that a lot of the up-and-coming D2 riders going to D1 would race at. But it wasn't the big track where everybody was like the hottest racers. But tracks like that are good because it develops the riders, right? It helps get them the confidence to succeed, to win. So when they go to Division One, they feel confident that they could, beat these guys because they're hard to beat. So you need confidence as a speedway rider for sure. But that's it for Chula Vista. It was fun times. It was good times. And we got an airplane coming too. But thanks for hanging out with us today, talking about Chula Vista Speedway. It was a good time, and there were happy memories. And I still have all the paper clippings and photographs, and it was kind of cool, and that was one of the highlights of my racing. But I have other highlights too, because I had a chance to race some of the very top riders like Mike Bass, Bruce Penhall, Bobby Boogaloo Schwartz when he was young, and John Cowboy Cook. And so I've had a chance to race after the Chula Vista some of these really hot riders. And maybe we'll talk about those experiences on another show. If you want that, we could do that. But thanks for hanging out. Thank you for watching the show today. We're doing a live stream. Whoa, my camera just fell. I caught you. But we're going to end this stream because the wind's picking up. But thanks once again. Thanks for hanging out. We got a few comments. Appreciate your comments and appreciate you watching the show. We're just having a good time. I'm riding the beach today, but I think I'm going to just ride it without going. I went live stream last time and it was kind of wild. But thanks once again. And for the live stream, like, subscribe if you haven't subscribed. And we appreciate you, and we appreciate you hanging out today at the beach. A sunny day. It's close to sunset. The wind's blowing. It's a gorgeous day, and the sand is perfect for riding. So I'm going to get on that Husqvarna right behind me there. I still ride all the time. My days of riding a speedway definitely has helped me as a rider, and riding helps me stay in shape. If I ever race at Costa Mesa again, I have some seat time on a bike. I'm not as good as I was back in the day that I just talked about. I must warn you. But I'm a little older too, a little heavier. So we're just having fun these days, right? Because Speedway's for young guys. The young guys succeed, and they're really the hottest riders in Speedway. And as you get old, you kind of are washed up. But I ride every day, so I'm not totally washed up. But I just have fun, enjoy life, and I use the motorcycle skills that I learned racing to help save me in dangerous situations and when I go real fast. But thank you once again. Appreciate you. Thanks for hanging with the live stream, for making comments, and we'll look forward to seeing you again. And I appreciate you. Thanks again, and we're going to see you next time. Take care.